Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the 3-Star Lounge. Today, I want to talk to you guys about Fallout 4. With the release of the new show and the update, there's been a push to get a lot of new eyes looking at the Fallout franchise, and with that, it has given me an opportunity to make a video that I've been wanting to make for a while that expresses an opinion about Fallout 4 that I know other people have, but I don't really see people talking about in videos. That being that survival mode not only improves immersiveness within the game, it is truly the only way to play Bethesda RPGs. Welcome to the lounge. Fallout 4 is a flawed game. And while I don't think I'll be breaking any news by saying this, I do have something else for you to contemplate as we make our way through the rest of this video. What does it mean to be truly immersed within the game? Does it just mean that you're locked in? Does it mean that you're aware of all the lingo within the world? Does it mean that you're aware of all the goings on within the world? Does it just mean that your decisions have high lasting impact within the world? Does it mean that you're important within the world? What does it mean? To me, to what it means to be immersed within the world, it just means that you are really locked in. That you're paying attention to what you're doing, that you're paying attention to what's around you, that you're paying attention to where you are and where you're going next, and not just walking blindly through the world following quest markers or what have you. What it means to be immersed within the world, in my eyes, it means to be able to navigate the world without necessarily needing the map and without necessarily needing a destination. Being able to recognize where you are just by having a quick look around the places that you've been before and being able to recognize that familiar ground. That is what it means to truly be immersed within the world, to be making the decisions that you feel you should be making should you be in that situation. That is what it means to be immersed within the world, if you were to ask me. Now, for you, that could be a different set of criteria, and whatever that may be, I want you to keep that in mind as we make our way through the rest of this video. Because as we go through this video, I'm going to be going over a handful of things that go to make the world of Fallout 4 more immersive when you make the transition from a traditional gameplay session to a survival mode gameplay session. And at the end of the video, I'm going to explain how this goes even further, leaving Fallout 4 and going into other Bethesda games, and how this may just be the way Bethesda has to make their games going forward to make them stand out, especially in a world where the smoke and mirrors of the Bethesda style is finally starting to fall off for a lot of people. Now, the biggest overarching thing that survival mode does to the player that makes the game more immersive is forced interaction with mechanics of the game that have always been there, but were either only interacted with on a surface level or not interacted with at all because they are completely unnecessary within a normal playthrough of a Bethesda game. The mechanic we're going to focus on first is sleep, because sleep is a mechanic that can be easily overlooked when making a transition from a normal playthrough to a survival mode playthrough. Because in a normal playthrough, the only reasons you would really sleep is to pass the time, as well as to get the bonus for well rested or for lover's embrace to continue on with the XP bonuses and other bonuses that those particular perks provide. Things change when you enter the throes of survival mode though, because once you enter survival mode, sleep is no longer just a way to get a little extra out of the things you do, because alongside the bonuses that you received in a normal playthrough when you slept, sleeping in survival mode is also the only way to save the game. This turns every settlement and every bed into a save point, and a very important one at that, because those are the only ways you can save. When you're in a tough dungeon and you see a sleeping bag now, instead of just being set dressing that you can use to get a little HP back because it's there, it becomes a quick save point or a midway checkpoint for you to get through that dungeon should something go wrong. That's not all though, there's a little bit more at play when it comes to sleep too, because another thing added into survival mode is adrenaline. You accumulate adrenaline by getting kills without sleeping. So the longer you stay awake and you're getting kills, you're actually doing more damage and increasing your DPS, but you lose adrenaline as you sleep. So there's a bit of a trade-off there. Do you stay up longer and keep breaking that adrenaline, making yourself stronger, or do you go ahead and drop that save, get that rest, get that HP back? And naturally, when you have decisions like this to make, there have to be items in the game to help stave off the need to sleep. This is where caffeine comes in. Within a normal playthrough, there is no caffeinated status. Nuka-Cola is just Nuka-Cola, and there are different flavors that will give you more HP and AP depending on the brand or type of Nuka-Cola. It's truly a solid item in its own right within a normal playthrough, being able to do all that great stuff, as well as making Nuka grenades when you have Nuka-Cola Quantum. But when you enter survival mode, it does all the things it did before, but also even more, making it a very valuable item to find when you're out there running through the wasteland. Because 2 Nuka-Colas of any kind, if you drink 2 Nuka-Colas, if you are a little bit thirsty, hurt, tired, you drink 2 Nuka-Colas, you'll get your caffeinated status, you won't be tired no more. You get your AP back so you can sprint more. You'll get your HP back so you start healing. And all of that while quenching your thirst in the way that water would, because 2 Nuka-Colas is the equivalent of 1 purified water in terms of relieving thirst. However, as great as Nuka-Cola is, as great as caffeine is, no amount of it will keep you from needing to sleep forever. Eventually, you're going to have to sleep, and not only because it is your save point, but when that time comes, you have to pay attention to where you sleep, because not all beds are created equal when you enter survival mode. When you're in a normal playthrough, all beds are created equal. Doesn't matter where it is, doesn't matter what it is, as long as you're able to sleep in it, you can sleep for as long as you want and you'll get all of the benefits of that rest. When you enter survival mode though, this is not the case. Those sleeping bags you find out in the world in dungeons, those are no longer just free sleeps. You can only sleep for so long within a sleeping bag or a dirty bed that you won't be able to get the well-rested status that you would normally get. Not only this, sleeping in dirty beds runs greater risk of contracting some sort of illness. Another feature added in survival mode that adds more danger to the wasteland and requires you to be more prepared for the things that you do in said wasteland. Now, there are some diseases that are worse than others. There are diseases like lethargy that just make it so your character needs to sleep more often. And then there's diseases like parasites, where you're taking damage over time that you definitely want to get rid of, maybe a little more urgently than another disease. But either way, you're going to want to get rid of that illness, and that is where the antibiotics come in. It is an item that is only in survival mode and is specifically for getting rid of diseases. But unlike a regular playthrough where all heals are essentially free, healing in survival mode comes with a cost, and this cost actually improves the value of other items in the game. Because at base, if you have stim packs, you really don't need another form of healing, maybe water just for shits and gigs, but you really don't need any other form of healing because there is no cost to using any of those healing items. However, in survival mode, every healing item that isn't food or drink comes with the cost of making your character thirsty, and in some cases you may even suffer from immune suppression, so you have even greater chance of contracting some sort of illness when you're out going through your normal playthrough. This changes the value of a lot of different things in the game, such as doctors and food items. In the normal playthrough, food items are really just kind of extra set dressing. It seems like if you have food in your inventory, you can use it to top off your health, but it really isn't necessary, especially if you have a steady stream of stim packs, which the game readily provides you in the wild. So if you're out scavenging, generally speaking, you'll have enough stim packs to keep yourself upright for as long as you need. But in survival mode, doing this can become quite expensive because a stim pack may not necessarily be the best way to heal. When you use a stim pack, you do heal not only your HP, but you heal all of your limbs as well, which is great, but this comes with the cost of thirst, meaning you will also have to use up your water. This increases the cost of using a stim pack to being more than just the stim pack itself, because now you're draining through your water for every time you use one. And this is the case for nearly all of the healing items or medical items that are not food and drink based. What this does is make it so that the food items that you have in your inventory have become the new and better primary source of regular HP healing when you're out in the wild. To that end, this brings us to cooking, a mechanic that in the base playthrough of Fallout 4 is rarely interacted with, and even if you do interact with it, it's generally just to purify dirty water you may have found and to roast up some animals you may have taken out over the course of your travels. But when you enter the Fallout 4 survival mode paradigm, things get a little different because the amount of food you're going to be eating is increased, and with the fact that illnesses are in the game, it becomes imperative that food you find out in the wild be cooked. Because in a normal playthrough, even if you don't cook irradiated food, you'll be able to eat that, get the HP, and heal off the rads easily because, as I stated before, healing is essentially free in a normal playthrough. In survival mode though, this is a risk that's often too great for the reward associated with it, because eating irradiated food not only comes with the normal dangers, that being the reduced amount of healing you'll get from that item anyway, and the rads you'll consume from eating that item. To get rid of those rads, you're going to have to consume more water, and if that's dirty, that's another increased chance of disease. So you're going to make things harder on yourself by simply not cooking the food. To my mind, this is a great change to the gameplay because it, like I said before, it makes the wasteland feel like that dangerous place it's supposed to be. It makes the wasteland feel like that miserable place that everyone says it is. When you talk to people out in the world of Fallout 4, everyone is talking about how shitty it is. And when you're looking around, everything looks shitty. But when everything is so easy, when everything comes to you so freely, you can't make the player feel like everything is shitty. You can't make them feel like there's any danger when you're giving them everything so easy. So when survival mode makes it so that everything is still there, but you have to earn it and nothing is free, it makes it feel like the danger is really there. But we are not done. What I want to touch on next is one of the main features that was added into Fallout 4 and one of the big selling points of the game back when it released way back when, and that is the settlement system. The settlement system is something that is really divisive within the community of Fallout 4 because it's something that is either you love it or you hate it, and really it is based on your tolerance for snap building jank, because while there are a lot of complaints about how the settlement system works, and these complaints are valid, these are not lies in any way, it is also can be said that this is true of every system that uses the kind of snap build system that Fallout 4 uses. So I would say it's more of a case of the system not being great than anything else, because every game I've ever played with a snap build system like this has the same issues of things not necessarily snapping where you need them to go. But I digress. In Fallout 4, the settlement system is such an integral mechanic to the game that there is an entire faction whose whole deal is based around going to the different settlements in the game and making use of the mechanics associated with it. And that faction is the Minutemen. But when you do a normal playthrough of Fallout 4, the Minutemen are the weakest faction in the game, and they kind of stay that way because the benefits that are associated with the Minutemen are mostly surrounding things that are useful with settlements. And when you're dealing with a normal playthrough with the ability to fast travel, the ability to not need to sleep, not need to eat, not need to drink, not need to really do anything that would involve a settlement, the only thing the settlement becomes is a place to store all of your various things you aren't using. It just becomes a big oversized storage container. And yes, you can build them up and you can do all this stuff, but when you have a settlement system that doesn't really matter, what people are going to do is they're going to do the bare minimum, and that's it. And they're also not going to interact with the game in a genuine way. I'll give you an example. One of the biggest complaints people have about the settlement system is that they cannot build a walled city that would keep out the raiders. Because if you go out and you're doing missions, eventually you're going to hear about a settlement that is being attacked and you're going to get a mission to go protect them. Or you'll get some kind of alert from President Garvey and people are going to hate it. But here's the thing. When you don't interact with these mechanics in a genuine way and you do things like just build a wall, you're going to fast travel there, everything's going to be broken, and they're going to be mad because the enemies do in fact spawn within the area that the walls can be built, or they spawn in an area that allows them to bypass the wall, making the wall useless. And that is a problem in isolated people. But I would say this: when you fast travel, even though you're fast traveling, the time it would take to get there still comes off the clock. So you have taken hours to get there. And it is supposedly canon that the people in these settlements are kind of trash in terms of defending themselves. They're kind of garbage. And when you're not interacting with the mechanics in a genuine way, you're not building up the defenses in any significant way that actually matters, of course, they're going to get overran. Because even in our real world, walled cities only work for so long. There's a reason we don't do that anymore. And sticking with the Minutemen and their roles and sticking with the settlement system in the Minutemen, this also greatly improves how their story feels to play through when you're dealing with a Minutemen playthrough. When you actually go ahead and interact with the settlement system, the Minutemen story feels more true to life and their goals. The Minutemen are all about trying to bring the Commonwealth together in a way where the people of the Commonwealth can protect themselves and help each other get by. And when you go ahead and do that, by the time you're at the end of the game, you've gone to every settlement, you've built up every settlement, you've helped every settlement, and you've probably linked together every settlement with supply lines to make sure that all of your resources are shared, because it makes everything easier all the way around when all of your resources between the various settlements are pulled together. All the water, wood, junk, all the things you store in one settlement, you can use it in any other settlement when you have those supply lines linked together. And when you do all of that, and you have the mortar strikes that you get when you get later in the Minutemen story, and you can set those mortars up, you can start bombing people anywhere in the Commonwealth. They become one of the more powerful factions to deal with on the map because of their reach when they work together. And that is something that is only built when you go through with the vision of the Minutemen. And that power, that growth, that redemption is only really felt when you actually interact with the settlement system, because it will be something impressive as every settlement goes from being a little patch of nothing or a little farm or the little family, and becomes something much, much more when combined with the resources of everything else. And you built all of these magnificent places for people to come and settle down at outside of Diamond City and Good Neighbor. Over the course of this video, I've mentioned fast travel and the lack thereof in survival mode when compared to a traditional playthrough. And this detail may be one of the largest details as when compared to everything else in terms of making the game more immersive, because there are a lot of moments within a traditional playthrough that players will usually lean on fast travel, and that is when you're returning to quest givers and doing various things like that. And that can really go a long way to keep you from really staying locked in, because the only time you walk to any particular location is the first time you go. After that, you're fast traveling every which way, bing, bang, boom, bomb. And that's not exactly staying locked into the situation that you're in, especially when you're doing certain quests and you could be walking back with certain NPCs and getting more story with them and getting more face time with other characters in the game, aside from whatever companion you may have with you, assuming there's any of them. And it's not just that, it also forces you to pay a little bit more attention to your surroundings, because you could be walking into a dangerous situation without even knowing it when you're walking back from a quest, because it's not something you would really be thinking about in a situation with fast travel. You had your route there, which could have been completely safe, and you have to either take the same route back or you take a different route back, not really thinking because you're not fast traveling back to the quest giver immediately, and then you get caught up in some shit. But also, It makes things that you learn in the game a little bit more useful. For example, I've usually sided with the railroad when I play Fallout 4. It's just the faction I enjoy playing as the most, sue me. But when I do that in survival mode for the first time, when I did that in survival mode for the first time, I actually paid attention to the rail signs. I actually was able to use that knowledge to be useful for me. When I saw a danger rail sign in my first survival mode playthrough, I knew I wasn't ready for whatever that was. I knew whatever that was would have completely owned me at that time, and I was able to get out of there alive without having to reset. And that was just a benefit of me staying locked into the situation I was in and knowing what was going on with these markings I'm seeing on the walls. And really, it allows you to enjoy those places in between the places, because that is what is really lost in a situation where you're fast traveling all the time, because there are multiple ways to get places. There are multiple routes you can take, some better than others, some with different things as opposed to others. But when you're fast traveling all the time, the one route you use to get wherever you're going, that is all you're ever going to know, because from that point on, you're transporting between place to place to place. And if nothing sends you to that secondary location, you're never going to see it. But what if you had enough of the places in between the places? What if you don't care about any of that shit and you just want to get somewhere relatively quickly? Well, there is a mode of transportation that exists within the game that is in between walking and fast travel in terms of speed, and that is the vertibird. It's something that was always in the game, but unless you just wanted to pull up in the helicopter shooting the Gatling gun for funsies, it was really kinda useless, because it's faster than walking, yes, but infinitely slower than fast travel in terms of your actual playtime. So when you're trying to get somewhere quickly, why would you use a vertibird as opposed to just fast traveling there? But when you're in survival mode and fast travel is no longer an option awarded to you, you will be very appreciative of a vertibird, because that is a much faster way to get from point A to B. And being able to just lay down fire with a Gatling gun, that's always a good time. I mean, come on, you can't really go wrong with that. But it really just makes this feature actually have the use it's supposed to have. It is actually giving it a place to be appreciated, as opposed to just being some cool shit you can do. Thus far, we've talked a lot about how survival mode changes the world, but not a whole lot about how survival mode changes you and how you build your character and play the game. And that is due in large part to the fact that a lot of the changes to your build are based around changes that are made to the world of Fallout 4. And I feel like it would be easier understood if I explained a bunch of the changes to the world first. When it comes to your character build in a traditional playthrough of Fallout 4, aside from your weapon and which special stat you want to maybe specialize in, there is not really that much difference in what your experience would be like. Yes, if you have a high strength character, you'll have way more carry weight, but your carry weight is that in a normal playthrough that you'll have plenty of carry capacity to carry what you need, as well as multiple weapons that you don't need, even when you're not a high strength character. But in a survival mode situation with the lowered carry weight, as well as bullets now costing weight as well, you are less likely to be able to walk around with miscellaneous weapons and items than you are in a traditional playthrough. In survival mode, depending on your strength count, you may not even be able to make use of certain heavy weapons like missile launchers and Gatling guns effectively, because the amount of space the ammo and the weapon itself take up leaves you with almost no room for scavenging junk and other materials, as well as the healing items you'd want to bring with you along the way. And another thing that survival mode does is give perks that you may not even consider using in a traditional playthrough a very, very significant glow up. A big example of this would be Aqua Boy / Aqua Girl perk. If you are in a traditional playthrough, you likely will never even interact with this perk, because all it does is allow you to not take radiation while you're in water, allows you to breathe underwater, and you also will be able to instantly go into stealth when you go underwater if you get it up to max level. But when you're in a traditional playthrough, outside of a handful of missions, you don't really need to go into the water. And even if you do, there are no enemies in the water, so you can breathe, and you have all types of medicine to get the radiation off of you when you're done with the water anyway. So there's no real need to interact with the Aqua Boy perk, because it's just a perk that you could be using for something else. Even though, should you want to, you could get every perk in the game, it is not likely that you will do so. But when you enter a survival mode playthrough, the water is now the safest way to travel around the map, because if you look at the map of Fallout 4, you'll notice that the map is full of water and rivers. And if you want, once you get past Concord out of Sanctuary and you get to the river, you can reach almost any section of the map without having to deal with too much land-based danger. And if you have the Aqua Boy perk, you're able to go within the water and not take any type of radiation damage and breathe within the water. And now you've all of a sudden gotten a way to travel around the map that is safe as well as fairly quick, because you're able to just swim without being interrupted by bullshit. And it's not just that, every single special stat will have a perk in it that you likely never really gave much thought to within a traditional playthrough of Fallout 4, but in survival mode may be invaluable to your run. For me, it was things like Party Boy. I never once thought about using Party Boy in a normal playthrough because I didn't really interact with the drinks and drugs in the normal playthrough that much. But in my survival mode run, because I have low strength, I ended up having to use a lot of the alcohol to get my strength up to have my carry weight to the point where I could carry the things back that I had. And I needed Party Boy to keep from becoming addicted to the things I was using. Or High Intelligence, which allows you to craft antibiotics instead of having to rely on finding them out in the world or buying them from vendors. High Strength, which allows you to have a more carry weight, and in a mode with carry weight lowered so spectacularly, it is actually very beneficial, because that is really the only way you could get away with using some of the bigger weapons in the game, using a high strength build, and that is not necessarily true of a traditional Fallout 4 run. Endurance, you have more HP perks there, natural armor, and these are just a few examples from a few of the special stats, just to show that there are perks that you may not necessarily have thought about using, that when you get into survival mode will definitely be on your radar, and just makes you appreciate all of these different things in the game even more, things that you may not have even known about. Because the fact of the matter is, when you're in a traditional playthrough of Fallout 4, the game takes care of you very well. The game makes sure that you always have what you need all the time, to the point that at no point is there really any danger around outside of areas where you're extremely underleveled. And that really shouldn't be the case in a game where they're constantly telling you the wasteland is dangerous. So all of these things together can combine to greatly improve what it feels like to play Fallout 4, especially when it comes to its greatest flaw in terms of its storytelling. And it's one of the first missions anyone should be playing when they play through the game, if they're taking the normal path the game wants to take, and that is the Concord mission. The Concord mission goes extremely far to absolutely nuke the immersion of a traditional Fallout 4 playthrough, because all of the danger that is supposedly out there gets sucked right out of the game immediately. And without going into too much great detail, the Concord mission ends with your character having access to power armor, a minigun, and having gone 1v1 with a death claw already. And the problem is, in a traditional playthrough of Fallout 4, you are expected to go to the roof of the building, put on the power armor, jump down, and spray down the Deathclaw 1v1 with a Gatling gun. And it's badass. It's cool. It is really cool. The problem is, this is one of the first things that happens, and you've already just obliterated one of the more dangerous, if not the most dangerous thing out there that you can find wandering the wasteland. You've already done it. And that just absolutely kills any idea that the world is dangerous, because you're walking around in this tank with a minigun, and you have almost unlimited rounds, because the amount of bullets that you have will last you quite some time just from the moment you get there. They could last you till you get to Diamond City. And when you have fast travel enabled, whenever your power cores are getting low, you can just fast travel back to your base and you don't have to lose your power armor. But at least when you're in survival mode, you have to wonder, do you want to keep the power armor? When I did my first survival mode playthrough, I didn't keep the power armor with me because at the time, I didn't have enough power cores to get anywhere. I wasn't sure where I was going at the time, and I didn't want to mess around, lose my power armor because I ran out of power, and now my power armor is just sitting out there in the middle of the wasteland. But when you're doing this mission in survival mode and you have all of the limitations that survival mode puts upon you, as well as the increased damage dealt and taken, when you do that Concord mission, the danger is still there. Even when you have the power armor on, you will still fuck around and get smoked by that Deathclaw in survival mode if you're not on your P's and Q's and you're not handling your business like you're supposed to. And this leads to my final thing, and that is general role playing in Fallout 4 anyway. Sometimes when I hear people talk about role playing in games, they forget that sometimes when you're dealing with role playing within a game, some of the limitations that you put on your character should not come from the game. They come from you, the player, using your creativity to create a character. And what it means to create a character is sometimes you have to be able to leave things behind because that's what your character would do. And this is something that really comes into mind when you deal with traditional RPGs, especially tabletop RPGs, because a lot of that comes with creating a personality for a character, creating the do's and don'ts for that character. And with those limitations comes the scenarios that make the game unique and fun to you. I will give you an example from my current survival mode playthrough of Fallout 4. Within this playthrough, I am doing a chem dealer run. And what this means is I am only able to gain caps through mission reward as well as selling chems. This also means I have to take out any of my competition within the wasteland. So anyone that primarily sells chems has to be taken out by the end of the playthrough. I'm also tasked with linking all the settlements together from my drug kingpin conglomerate because I can't be a kingpin if I don't have a network set up. Am I right or am I wrong, people? And it's not only these limitations in terms of money making that I've lived to put. It's not just these limitations in terms of money making that I put upon myself. I am also only using handguns and fully automatic weapons because you gotta have your drive-by weapon. You know, you out here in these streets doing these things. But these things have led to me having more fun than any other playthrough in Fallout 4 because of the situations I have found myself in. And this is not just true of Fallout. If you were to play the anniversary edition of Skyrim that comes with all the Creation Club bullshit that came out after the game did, if you were to play that and throw on survival mode in that game as well, it goes a long way to improve that game in the same exact ways because it makes everything in the game have purpose again. All that food you find in the game has purpose. The soup you make has purpose. The fur armor has purpose. All of that "it's cold outside" talk has purpose. That is the one way you will actually freeze to death in Skyrim, a place that they tell you is frigid cold, and that is to play survival mode. I bring up Skyrim because a lot of the story immersion issues that people have with Fallout 4 in terms of your choices not meaning a whole lot in the grand scheme of things are just as true of Skyrim. But Skyrim does not get the same hate, and I'm sure there are plenty of reasons for it. There are plenty of reasons for everything. That is not the point. The point is that the immersion factor for these games clearly was not built upon your ability to impact the story, because Skyrim has often been called one of the most immersive games of all time, while people are very quick to say that Fallout 4 is not immersive in any way, and a lot of that comes down to their goals. In Skyrim, their goal is to make you feel like an epic powerhouse power fantasy type character, and they do that immediately, early, and often. And when it comes to Fallout 4, you are meant to be a survivor, a scavenger, someone that becomes badass over the course of the game as they do their dirty deeds. And when you're doing this traditional playthrough of Fallout 4, you get everything too quick, too early, and you don't have to earn any of it. Whereas when you activate survival mode, every inch is earned, every step matters, and it makes you feel like the power that you gain towards the middle and end of the game, that it was built up. It's something that you earned, and when you finally get there, you do feel powerful, but it's not because you were meant to be. It's not because you were the chosen one. It's because you are the sole survivor. And that's the video. I hope this video can go any amount of the way to get you to try survival mode. I really do think it's the best way to play the game. And if it's your first time playing it, I say it's worth giving it a shot. And remember, you can always turn the difficulty down if you try survival mode and you realize it's not for you, it's not it. You could always turn your difficulty down, but you cannot go back to survival mode after that. So I would always say it's definitely worth a shot. And if you find that the game is too difficult or the mechanics just don't agree with you, you can at that point go ahead and dial it out, turn it off. But one last thing I will say, that the Skyrim version of survival mode, if you wanted to try that, is not a difficulty mode, so it doesn't have all of the same limitations. It's something that you could turn on and off at will, so that is a little bit of an improvement as opposed to the Fallout 4 version of survival mode. But that may be more to do with the fact that one is like a creation club mod and the other one is an actual mode within the game. Lastly, I know that the next gen update has been breaking a lot of mods. Like, it broke a lot of creation club stuff too. There was an update last week, I believe, that should have fixed a lot of that stuff. I know a lot of the issues I'd been dealing with since the next gen update have been fixed now, so that may be something that is done. And as always, if you made it this far, I truly appreciate you watching this video all the way through. You should go ahead and leave that like, because obviously if you made it this far, you like that shit. And go ahead and consider subscribing as well for more videos like this whenever they get made. See you next time. Bye now.